Good morning and good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to a LexisNexis complimentary webinar titled Marketing Your Law Firm, Attracting Clients with Modern Marketing Strategies. Before introducing our speaker, we have a few announcements. Today's program is not eligible for CLE credit. For our phone participants only, if a problem arises during the program, dial *0 for the operator. Please take note of the survey that is available to you. We ask that you please complete it as it provides excellent feedback for us so we can continue to bring you outstanding programs that meet your needs. For this webinar only, we will be selecting 10 individuals who complete the survey at the end of the webinar for a free copy of Cynthia Sharp's new book entitled The Lawyer's Guide to Financial Planning. Our speaker welcomes your questions. You can submit your questions via the Q&A section of the platform throughout our program today. We will try to address as many audience questions as possible, but please keep in mind all questions may not be answered due to time constraints. No questions will be asked verbally. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Cynthia Sharp, the founder of The Sharper Lawyer, spent close to 30 years building a successful law firm. During that time, she became a noted CLE lecturer and has taught thousands of attorneys and other professionals throughout the country. We thank Cynthia for her time in preparing today's webinar. Cynthia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and welcome to everybody who's decided to spend your time attending this webinar today, and also to LexisNexis for putting the webinar on here. In any event, if you think about today, what we are talking about is those of you who are starting your own law firm, how does the modern law firm market? It's certainly much different from the way when I started my law firm close to 35 years ago. Now, today's marketing really takes advantage of social media to the extent that people have been trained in the social media field. Now, some people feel very overwhelmed by the concept and don't know where to begin. And those of you who are interested in having a copy of my slides, you can go ahead and email me directly. So let's talk about the whole concept of social media and modern marketing. Some of you who are in this audience, and I understand that we do have a pretty big audience here, are what we call the digital natives. Now, the digital natives, those are the young ones of you just starting out who are starting the practice and don't have any clients at all, but yet you know how to use the internet. You know how to use social media. Now, let's just talk about how many people do use social media. The numbers of attorneys who use social media has quadrupled between the years 2008 and 2012. And any time that I see a statistic that quadruples in just a matter of 4 years, it definitely has my attention. But then we look at what is the real result that we're looking for. The real result is how many people get business out of social media. Well, out of a recent survey done by the Legal Technology Committee of the ABA, 32% of those participating got actual business through their blog. Now, what I'd like to go on and speak to you about is in modern marketing, we have the traditional marketing, and the traditional marketing really always has a plan. And with the traditional marketing, we always start out with, where are we now? What is our assessment? Well, now an overall encompassing marketing plan must have in place social media as part of the component. Now, Jay Baer, social media champion, really has the best quote. And what that quote is content is fire and social media is gasoline. Now, think about who do we do business with. If we think about who we do business with those that we know, like, and trust. Those that we know, like, and trust are the people that we can get to know through the internet by reading their content. And by reading their content, we are able then to know what they're about and who they're about. Okay, moving right along. Let's think about why don't attorneys use social media. But first of all, why don't they use social media? I believe that part of it is they believe it is confusing. They're concerned about their image. They're concerned about ethics issues. They feel that it's difficult to generate content, and there's simply not enough time. Now, at this point, we're moving to slide 7, which is a poll, and if we could have everybody join in the poll. Moving on is done with the poll. Let's move right along with the presentation. And move into our quote on John Wanamaker. And what John Wanamaker told us is that half of the money spent on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. And that's why it's good to, first of all, you've got to try a lot of different things. And in the content marketing area, that is key to get a lot of your content out there. And sooner or later, you're going to start getting results. Now, on to the next slide is laying the groundwork for your particular. Okay, in step number 1, really, what we're doing is laying the groundwork. And the groundwork really is the buying in. Who are, and we're going to get into this in a lot more detail in a few minutes, but we got to get our own buy-in. Who is our target audience? What's our key message? And ultimately, as in any plan that we do, we need to review the results and tweak the plan. Next slide. Now, in what we need to look at, though, what are we trying to accomplish in content marketing? First of all, we create the content. And that is by creating or have someone create for us blogs, create the web content. And this is the stage that stumps most people. This is what stumps not only attorneys, but other professions that I deal with. And, who has time to create the content? The fact of the matter is you probably have a wealth of content that you just need to repurpose. Do you have videos? I personally think that videos are just one of the most powerful ways to get your message out there. Have you been promoting to attract visitors? See, you think about hanging your shingle out there. You've got your shingle out there. Who's going to drive by? The content is analogize that to your shingle. Then we've got you could guest blog. You can use traditional media to drive people to your blogs, to your website. Ultimately, once we start getting these visitors through social media, is we gather contact information. And that's the world of permission marketing, and that's where we get then our e-newsletters, our e-books, white papers, and the like. Ultimately, we have a follow-up. The follow-up is context dependent. Because remember, what we want to do is seek referral of a client or convert to a client. So for example, if when I was in practice, I was an estate planning elder law attorney. The people who sent me the most business were other attorneys and accountants, people in the financial planning field. So once they would connect with me, I would then keep sending them information, articles that I had written, maybe articles that someone else had written. And then ultimately, I wanted to develop a relationship, because the bottom line that we have here is that we want to get a client or get a referral of a client. Now, the next slide, please, is where we actually lay the groundwork for the social media marketing campaign. Now, first of all, it's our own buy-in. Now, for those of you, though, who are not solos, who are working for somebody else, have the other attorneys in your firm? Does your own staff, have they bought in? We then have to identify what are the roles and the responsibilities of each individual. I want to emphasize here that many attorneys who are in the older range, who are of the digital immigrant as opposed to the digital native, say, oh, clients just come in my door. Well, my attitude is that you're leaving clients out there who could be connecting with you by not taking advantage of every single resource that you have in the social media arena. I am not saying, though, to give up traditional marketing or traditional networking. That it was mentioned in the introduction that I have a book that has been published by the American Bar Association. I made the connection with the people at the ABA who I had hoped would be my publisher through social media first, through LinkedIn. Then I flew out to a conference, made a live connection. It was already warmed up, though, because of the social media. And then afterwards, it was through social media that I really was able to get that connection solidified and to get my book contract in effect. And this will happen to you, lawyers in the legal field as well, particularly in the area of getting referrals. So think about it. You make friends, social media friends with someone in a bar association setting, in a professional setting, or through a LinkedIn social group, and then go to an in-person event, solidify the relationship, and then keep it warmed up through social media. The most important thing I can tell you today, though, is having your accountability tools in order. Because we all start out with certainly a great deal of hope that these items that we're going to keep up with our social media campaigns, because we're full of optimism. And then when the results don't come immediately, it can get us a little bit off track. That's where the accountability tools come in. And so I use part of my accountability in my own campaigns is how many times am I posting on LinkedIn a month? How many video blogs do I do? And the like. Now, moving on to the next slide, we move on to see what the objectives actually are. And what are your objectives? You're the only one that can identify it. Most of us want to get more clients. What about branding? And do we know what branding really is? You know, branding is a promise. Branding is a promise of the way that we do things. I see so many clients of mine, because I do coaching for attorneys in business development. And what I see is that they allow their brands to develop by chance. And so instead of developing strategically an image and developing a core image and a core message, they just go around and do not strategically tweet. They do not strategically join LinkedIn groups. They do it willy-nilly. Well, let me tell you, the branding process really never stops. So make sure that you, before you start putting it out on social media, determine what is your brand. And then ultimately, it could be a platform for reputation management. And let's just dive into that for a few minutes. Some attorneys object to social media, saying, well, maybe people will say bad things about me. People will say what they want about you, whether or not you're involved in the social media conversation. So my attitude is, take control of the driver's seat. The best way to manage your reputation in the event that someone says something unflattering about you is to have established a great reputation right away from the outset and keep it up. You see, in your website placement, I hope that all of you who are listening do have a website, because if you don't, how are potential clients going to find you? How are potential referral sources going to find you? The first step that I would start with then also would be a blog, and we'll get into that in a moment as well. Now, the step as part of this initial endeavor, this initial foray into the social media area, is completing an initial assessment. So do you have a marketing plan at this point? If we were speaking live and I had you all in a live audience, many of you would be ducking your head below the table, because most attorneys do not have an up-to-date marketing plan, and you can make one yourself. What metrics, if you do have a marketing plan, how are you measuring your success? And I measure the metrics that I use, first of all, in social media, because I believe so passionately in that the results are generated, that I keep track, first of all, how many people am I touching? I know how many people I'm touching through engagement. By engagement, if someone sees that I tweet out a valuable piece of material and they retweet it or favorite it, then I know that I have hit pay dirt. So that's the type of metrics that I keep. You know, how many times am I posting? Which social media platforms should you use? Well, the ones that you're going to stay active in. There's so many new ones all the time. Your friends are asking you to join this one or connect with me here and there. And you don't have time for all of it. I don't have time for all of it. Here's what I've come down on is that I like, of course, there's the website and a blog. I urge a video blog. Last year, I did an experiment where I did 10 blogs, where I did the blog as both a video and as a written blog. I got 2 pieces of direct business out of one of the video blogs. So now what I'm doing for this upcoming year is I'm looking at what are the key messages I want to send out, writing my blogs based on those key messages, and then strategically posting. I like then, of course, in addition to website and blog, which is where I live, that's where my content lives. That's how I show people what I know. That's how I get people to know, like, and trust me. But how do I get them there? It's through the other platforms. It's through Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and the like. And then what about assessing, are there professionals in your firm who have their own social media presence? And if you are with a firm that is a little bit larger, then you should be working on two different social media objectives, one firm-wide and the other would be for individual wide is the way that we would work it. And with the individual, though, you want to make sure that the individual as well as the firm is sending out the same consistent types of messages. Now, if we could move into the next slide, and that's talking about administrative matters. Do you have internal social media policies? Go ahead and Google internal social media policy law firm. You get some nice free templates. Use that as a starting point, because you want to make sure. I've seen some pretty bad things go out there with some words that you don't want your grandmother to hear. Okay, these are lawyers sending out those types of responses. So on the internet, you do not want to have your firm's brand reputation besmirched. So we don't think that we should have to tell our professional staff that what they can and can't do online, but frankly, the same rules are going to apply inline as online, because it's just that the differentiation is that on social media, you have the opportunity to make a fool out of yourself in front of the world. Well, maybe not the whole world, maybe just 1.3 billion people. For you see, there are 1.3 billion people in social media country now. Social media is a larger country, largest in the world. It is now larger than China. We not only want to have in our law firms an internal social media policy, we also want to take into account the ethical considerations, and there's several to be concerned about. Each of our states have rules of professional conduct. At the ABA level, it's the model rules of professional conduct. Pay close attention to rules 7.1 through 7.5. That's your attorney advertising rules. There has been at the national level, there were some recent updates adopted that really took into account the effect of technology, but just don't worry, it's not a whole revamp of the rules. You'll need to check in your own state to see if they've been adopted. If you can't find it, if you want to email me, I have the rules of most states on hand. Now, also, here's the big thing to know is that if you do decide to have an outside organization help you out with your social media, with your website, with your other LinkedIn, Facebook, blog, make sure that they understand the ethical rules that lawyers must follow. There is a string of cases where attorneys have had ethics complaints filed against them, and it's because the person who created their website inadvertently broke the ethics rules. Now, I can tell you that if you go with a reputable organization who deals with primarily or only with attorneys, that you're not going to run into that problem. So be very careful with that. And I do know that our sponsors today, LexisNexis, I've looked at their work, and the websites and blogs that they produce certainly are within the rules of professional conduct. And that really then brings me to the step 2, and that is on the next slide, and that is determining your key audience and what is your key message. Now, who is your target audience? Is it your clients? Well, maybe that's part of it. You're looking at who's your ideal client, who's your clients, who are your referral sources, what other referral sources do you want to meet? One of my target audience is the media. I want the media and other bloggers to be part of my target audience. I want my competitors to be part of my target audience. And here's what you must understand, is that the world has shrunk. And even if your practice is local, there are influencers throughout the country who can help send clients to you if you find them on social media. So think about, in finding your audience, how does your ideal, let's for example say, who is your ideal client? If I were doing family law, where would my ideal client be going? What kinds of key messages would they be looking for? You know, maybe alimony, child support, visitation issues, and the like. In creating the key message, so where do your people hang out? There's lots of studies that are done on this, professionals who have taken care of this. If you don't have time to do it yourself, and now in creating your key message, you want to capture your company's voice. I see so many websites that have the same old blah, blah, blah. We are caring, compassionate, and professional. And when you meet the lawyers, they are neither caring nor compassionate. What is your firm's personality? And if you need a personality overhaul, well, think about that as well. What can you do to change your image from within? Now, if we move on to the next slide, I've given you some information on conducting keyword searches. And then what you do is when you find your keywords, so for example, if alimony, if you're a family law attorney and alimony, new alimony rules, whatever the keywords are, then that is where you base your content creation, because that is what your audience wants to hear. And then ask yourself, how does each key message that we create support our goal? And if you look then on the next slide, then we're on how to conduct keyword searches. It's real easy. Just set up an Google AdWords account, and you will see what keywords in your industry. You'll see the monthly search volume. Now, if we move on to the next slide, and we then look at step 3, is how do we develop a plan? How do we develop an action plan? Because if you have not set crystal clear goals that are tied to your marketing plan and tied to your business plan, then then you'll be wandering around without a strategy and wondering why you have not met these non-existent goals. My marketing plans are quite clear at the beginning. My process is I establish an annual activity goals minimum, and then minimum quarterly, minimum monthly, minimum weekly activity goals. For example, I write columns. I write at least one 750-word column per month. I write at least a 2,000-word article every quarter. And then what I do is repurpose all of this information into tweets and LinkedIn so that I can get people to come to my website and ultimately to get business. Now let's go on to the next slide, because this is a good time to remind us of where we're going with all of this, with all of these steps. With our steps, we're really looking at, we have an overview of our content. Remember, we're creating the content. Then this is what our plan really says. How much content are you going to create a year? So my video goal for this year, for 2015, because I'm on my 2015 marketing plan, is I want to have 26 2.5-minute videos by the end of the year. So, and then as far as guest blogs, I've identified bloggers who are always looking for content. Remember this. The traditional media and the bloggers are always looking for top quality content. And then again, we know, we've been through this, that we gather the information, follow up, follow up, follow up. Now, in outlining our metrics, we develop our editorial calendar. So that's what my key metrics are. I want to look at how has my revenue grown in a particular quarter? Did my revenue, I don't think that any marketing plan, it's not fair to really measure revenue until you've been doing it close to a year, unless there's an exception to that, and that is if you have a targeted advertising that you're paying for. Because if you've got targeting, because there's really two types of marketing that I do. One is my very targeted, that I'm willing to pay for, but then the rest of it is my reputation establishment, and that's my soft content marketing. And for that, I have an editorial calendar, and again, the key messages are what inform the content. And the next slide really talks about our websites. Is your picture up to date? Do you have a professional photograph taken? I see some pretty embarrassing photographs up there. People, because now we're all photographers. We've all got iPhones with cameras on them. And so, but it's not good enough. We got to make sure that our lighting is correct. On all of your profiles, are you consistently branded? Is your information complete? Let me just give you a couple other universal rules when you're in the social media world. Do not post when you're angry or frustrated. I see a lot of people make some pretty big fools of themselves. Use lots of graphics and pictures. People love it. Before you're going to meet somebody, like for example, I was having a lunch yesterday with somebody that I had met at a networking event. You can believe I linked with them put LinkedIn ahead of time. I checked out their profile. I checked out their resume. I checked out what kinds of things have they been tweeting, if anything. Now, in your campaign emails, your newsletters, make sure that you show people your social media icons. Do you have your Twitter icon that they can just press and online and connect with you on Twitter? And also, on your website, This is how you're best able to capture names and email information, is by actually having something of value that they can sign up for. So make sure that you take advantage of that. And the next slide is blogging. You know, your preliminaries are, you want to make sure that you set up a blog if you're going to do it yourself. I personally, if I can hire it out, I try to hire things out so that I can put my own self to my best and highest use. You want it from your homepage on your website, link to your blog. If it is not indeed part of your website, I personally have my blog for now as part of your website, as part of my website on your blog. Make sure that you've got social sharing buttons. Wouldn't you like your blog to go viral? So if you put the ability, if you give your readers the ability to retweet, the ability to post on their Facebook page, then you'll be very surprised. You know, you've got a lot of material that you may have already posted. You know, what I've been doing is going back through my old posts, seeing what can I expand, what can I recycle, and then again, guest blogging on other sites. You want to make sure that your blog, we have all heard of search engine optimization, that great mystery of the internet world. How do I get my website and my blog up there? Well, first, write content that's worth sharing. I tend to write shorter posts. I personally, I like a post that's 300, 400 words, because we don't have the attention spans that we used to have. And then ultimately, if somebody does run your blog, then make sure that you send them a thank you note. And then the mantra is tweet it, share it, and email it. Now, your next slide is choosing your platform. Now, I'd like to just give you a couple LinkedIn tips. I integrate LinkedIn. It's into my daily routine. It's kind of dropping in and having coffee with my peeps. I like to see what they're posting for the day. Well, you know, especially after an election, that's always fun. But you know, more importantly, are they sharing information with me that's going to be valuable to me in the business world? Because you see, this is how this whole social media works. It's all about crowdsourcing. I know what sites to go to get valuable information. I know who to avoid too. I know the people who I call the whiners on the internet. You know, the attorneys who on their Facebook pages say, oh, I'm working another 7-day work week, another 14-hour day, don't get to take lunch again. My attitude is get organized and get a life. I don't want to listen to those people. I want to listen to the people who tell me the 10 top cases in my field for the year, the type that is going to be content. So then I'm searching for content. Somebody's posting it. Maybe it's you. And then when I find your content, now I've got a new contact. In LinkedIn, I make most of my connections through my LinkedIn groups. And the LinkedIn groups are people who are going to be have the capability to send information, collect, or to send clients your way. Connect with your alumni. LinkedIn has got a great rhythm for you to be able to connect with your alumni, but most importantly, participate in the conversation. Comment on other people's posts. Watch their video. Number one, you're going to learn something. Number two, go ahead and send it on out to your friends. Your Twitter mates are going to appreciate this, both the ones who you're sending content and the ones who are receiving it. Now, with Twitter, I use Twitter for customer service. Remember, Twitter's the one with hashtags? So, for example, if I'm going to be when I'm flying, I always get better service from airlines when I tweet to them about any customer service issue I'm having. When I want to rebook a canceled flight, and also retweet on some of your posts include please RT, please retreat, please retweet. Sometimes people actually do. Again, I love YouTube. YouTube is one of the platforms that you should be using the most. And now on to the next slide. Here's a slide that, or excuse me, a platform that a lot of attorneys do poo-poo. And and I don't really quite understand that, because again, we are able to have people get to know us better by posting not too personal things on Facebook. If you take a look at my Facebook page, I mostly post about my cute dog. I post about, some things I do cooking-wise, because that's the part of my public self that I choose to reveal to the social media world. It shows the real me. But then on my Facebook, I also talk about my book, about times that I'm going to be appearing in giving lectures and the like. So I can tell you by looking at the next slide, a Facebook story that happened in my own practice, and that is that there's two people, my Facebook and real life friends, Bruce Steiner, who's a New Jersey attorney, and Ron Fatula, who's a New York attorney. Well, Ron's secretary had posted on his networks or on his Facebook site, "Oh, come and like us on our business Facebook." Well, I put on the Facebook, on his Facebook site, I put, "Oh, Ron's a wonderful attorney, known him for 20 years. I've sent him a lot of clients." Bruce emailed me that night and said, "I've been looking for a new New York attorney to send my cases to. Is Ron really the guy?" Now go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll see that the next connection that was made was between Ron and Bruce. Both of them knew, liked, and trusted me for many years, so they trusted my recommendation. If we move on to the next slide, it's the follow-up process. Why are we trying to make these connections? Because we want to, first of all, identify what's our best possible outcome with these folks. Is it to get a client? Is it to get a client referral? And is the direct contact, is it going to be that I'm going to call them for lunch, or is it that soft touch that I'm just going to keep sending them information through periodic soft touches, through email or snail mail, as to content that I believe that they're going to be interested in? And if we look at the next slide, here's a sample follow-up chart. Who's responsible? Who's the contact? Who's the source of the contact? And then follow-up number one, was it actually completed? In my own business, I thrive on these Excel sheet charts. They are the way that I make sure that I am making use of all of my follow-up. Now, if we look at that, the next slide, what we see is that we now got to measure. Remember at the beginning, we started out with step one was an assessment. Then we went through steps building this social media marketing plans and execution. And now what we do is say, well, did we have the right plan? I usually try to do a monitoring once a month. And then I'll say, if the results are not exactly how I wanted them to be, then I'm going to recalibrate. If my return on investment is not what I hoped it to be, then I want to go ahead and recalibrate into a different type of plan. Now, if we move into the next slide, in the step 6, I like to first of all look at what's my activity. How many videos did I post? How many tweets did I do? What's my reality versus what my goal was? This is why the specific written goals with an accountability chart are absolutely critical. Now, after we measure activity, another way to measure is reflected on the next slide, and that is what's our reach, our retweets, our shares, our comments. Did people like us? How do we want more? Is that even important? Is the number of fans important? It may not be important to you. Boy, the number of retweets certainly is. And then if we look at step 6 again, the next slide is we could actually monitor what's happened on our website, what's happened with our analytics in terms of how many social mentions did we get and the like. And then if we move on to the final step 6, and that is our results. Did we make more money? Did we have more potential clients? Did we maybe spend less money in other marketing endeavors that we had been engaged in? So compare, what is your ideal revenue figure? Have you sat down, because now we get right back to the beginning, is have you actually sat down and determined what percentage do you want to grow your practice in the next year? Now, if we go on to the next slide and we see, what is moving forward, did you learn anything new today? Is there just one thing that you know that you can change today? Now, the evaluations, we've come to close to the end of our time together. Every time I present, I give 3 speeches. I give the one that I hope to give. Then I give the one I really deliver. And then when I recap, I give the one I wished I would have liked to have given. Other than my little stumble in the beginning because of the technological issue I experienced, please let me hear from you. What did you learn that was valuable? What was the least valuable? Now, we have time certainly for questions. Please do send in your questions and let me know what you want to know more about. And what I urge you as we move on to the next slide is to keep the conversation open. At this time is a good time, moving on from questions to about my book, The Lawyer's Guide to Financial Planning. I know that LexisNexis is generously giving away 10 copies to those of you who participate in the survey at the end. So I know that you've had 2 polls to participate in. I hope you participated, because that's how the company knows how to serve you best. And then with participating in the final survey will be very informative as well. I think the book's a good book. I've been told that it's very useful. Take a look at the ABA store and look at the table of contents. You'll find that there's a lot of different information, and there is an image that's on this slide, a code that gives you the code for the 20% discount if you're not lucky enough to win. As I told you throughout, I am a business development coach. I developed my expertise over 30 years in practice, and then over the past 5 years studying the craft and the principles to help lawyers succeed. So please do email me for more details. On to the next slide. So you can see I'm active in social media. Come and hang out with me on Google+. And at this point, we are at the end of our time together. And again, you can tell I am very passionate about my information. If you have any of your bar associations or law firms that are local to you that would like to have me come and share my information, please have them contact me directly by email. And now's the time for me to turn back over to Jared.
Hey, Cindy, thank you for sharing. A couple questions here. What would your advice be for maybe someone who's just starting a blog on actually getting people to their blog? So what would you have to say for that?
Okay, if you've just started a blog, the way that I started getting people to my blog was I developed an email list. So you've got friends, you've got other attorneys, you've got referral sources. Start having an email marketing list, and I do recommend using some type of an e-blast service. There's a number one of them around. Secondly is every time that you post a blog, tweet out over Twitter something about your blog using a keyword, and post on Facebook that your blog has posted, and then finally on LinkedIn as well. So that will start getting you activity to your blog.
Great. And then I guess one more question before we wrap things up. What would you say for someone who's maybe been an attorney for decades and, social media is something new to them? What do you think the best way of learning, about Twitter, about LinkedIn, about blogging?
Okay, the best way to learn. The question is what's the best way to learn about Twitter and blogging and the like? Here's how I learned is that I took a couple of half-day courses where you're hands-on. And so they got in the room, helped us set up profiles. I know there's online courses. And then we actually tweeted to each other, did LinkedIn to each other. So I think trying to do it yourself is kind of tough to learn it yourself. I personally handle a lot of my social media now, but that's because 5 years ago I started learning and then just kept picking up along the way.
Well, thank you very much. On behalf of LexisNexis, I would like to thank Cynthia for today's program. Please feel free to contact her directly if you have any questions that you'd like to explore further. Today's attendees will receive an email with the webinar recording. As a reminder, this is the third part of a three-part series on starting a law firm. Please look for additional information coming about our 2015 series. Also, we are giving away 10 copies of Cynthia's book, so go ahead and complete our survey that you'll be receiving shortly. Thanks again, and have a great day.
Thank you.